Student loan forgiveness would be nice to have, but probably shouldn't count on it. Kind of like a winning lottery ticket would be great to have, but it doesn't happen often. There are a number of issues that have to get resolved before the new administration coming in would be able to do this, even though some have argued that perhaps they could do it just by executive order. Now, keep in mind that for me personally, I still have a plus loan or parent plus loan for when my son went to college. So if my loan is forgiven, I would be really happy. That would help me out. But I'm not counting on it. There are already existing programs for loan forgiveness. For example, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which, in the press has been reported to have like a 97 or 98% rejection rate, which unfortunately is true, because people had worked in the public sector thinking that after 10 years their loan was going to get forgiven, and then it didn't because they found out the rules had changed. That is really too bad. They should have been notified. I agree with that, right? You don't go into this thinking the rules are one thing because you were told one thing, and then all of a sudden the rules change and the rug gets pulled out from under you. There's also a teacher forgiveness. So for teachers who teach in public schools in certain areas of the country, once you meet certain qualifications, a portion of your loans can get forgiven. And then there's also discharge for things like military service and death and disability and things like that. So loan forgiveness already does exist. But in the news, we're hearing now about other loan forgiveness programs. So with the incoming administration, numbers have been tossed around about getting $10,000 or $50,000, perhaps even all of student debt, which totals $1.5 trillion forgiven. I don't think it's going to happen. As much as I think it would help me personally, I don't think it's going to happen. Number one, there's an issue of fairness, right? By forgiving student loans, you're essentially transferring that burden onto taxpayers, all taxpayers. But we also know that only a portion of the students in the United States go to college. Not everybody goes to college, not necessarily because they want to and couldn't get in or whatever. Not everybody wants to go to college, right? Other people got jobs, other people went to trade schools, whatever. Okay, fine, it is what it is. But the point is, not everybody went to college. So should the people who didn't go to college bear a tax burden to help pay off loans for those who did? Now, the idea of student loan forgiveness is actually pretty popular, even among those who went to college. I was reading an article recently that stated that of the people who did not go to college, the majority of them actually favor loan forgiveness. Didn't get into why, but that they did. So it's a popular idea. But it also creates this disincentive, right? So for people who really worked hard and worked second jobs or extra shifts or whatever to earn extra money to pay off their loans, what would happen to them? The people who work really hard to save for their kids' college so that they don't have to borrow, what would happen to them? Don't know. And then, of course, the parents who took on debt. So like me, who took on a Parent Plus loan, there's really been no discussion in any of the proposals about forgiving any Parent Plus loan amounts. So if loan forgiveness goes through, I, unfortunately, would not qualify because I have a Parent Plus loan. The loan forgiveness discussions have been really taking place has really been on forgiveness for the student themselves and not necessarily the parent. Is that really fair? Maybe yes, maybe no. All sorts of arguments. But there's also something else that I would share with you that might make loan forgiveness a bad idea, as much as I might want it or anybody else might want it. And that's actually something called the Bennett hypothesis. Now, I'd heard of this before, but I never knew it was called this. But back in the late 80s, during the Ronald Reagan administration, the Secretary of Education at that time was William H. Bennett. And he had put forth this idea, this hypothesis, that if the federal government offers up more student aid, it would not really help families afford college even more, because college would simply raise the price in the amount of student aid. So for example, if loan forgiveness, for example, was $10,000 a year, okay, so everybody was student loan, just $10,000 gone, would that over time just raise the price of college by an extra $10,000? Now, studies have been done that both support as well as refute the Bennett hypothesis, right? So I'm not saying that it is true. However, personally, I suspect that over time it probably is. And so the point here is that if you knew that you took on student loan debt, right, either as parents or as students, right, and that $10,000 was going to be forgiven, would you now set your sights higher, your prices higher by $10,000? So for example, as a family, if you knew that you could afford or were willing to borrow $40,000 before, now knowing that $10,000 was going to be forgiven, would you now say, well, $10,000 is going to be forgiven, so really I'm going to now look to borrow $50,000, knowing that a portion would be forgiven? And now if you're willing to borrow or spend $50,000, that means you're willing to pay a higher price. Would colleges raise their prices an extra $10,000 to account for the fact that effectively the first $10,000 for those who borrow is essentially free, right? Because loans get forgiven. We haven't even talked about the potential tax impact, meaning there's been some discussion about loans getting forgiven being a tax-free transaction, although typically if you're forgiven loans, other types, it's not a tax-free transaction except in the instances of things like public service loan forgiveness or that teacher loan forgiveness, which are tied to a job requirement. Those are tax-free transactions, currently anyway. So with the Bennett hypothesis, would that over time just serve to offset the benefit of loan forgiveness? I don't know. Some studies, again, support it. Some studies refute it. I suspect that what would happen is over time, colleges would simply raise their price to account for the loan forgiveness. I'm definitely in the support the hypothesis camp. But again, that's just my personal opinion. I don't know. So loan forgiveness, while it's a great idea on paper, or some people think it's a great idea on paper, and just with the stroke of a pen, just make everything disappear, is really, really complicated. And because it's really, really complicated, as the saying goes, don't hold your breath. It's still up to each family to be able to borrow and manage their finances responsibly. And families who are in the search process, you still need to do a good search so that whatever school your son or daughter goes to, that school fits financially, as well as academically and socially and culturally. I would not count on loan forgiveness. And by the way, I've had people already ask me, oh, should we send our kid to this school knowing we're going to have to borrow with the expectation that part or all of this loan is going to get forgiven? I would not do that at all. Okay, that's like saying, should I go buy a lottery ticket to go buy all this stuff, right? To go buy the new house and the sports car and everything else with the expectation that we're going to win the lottery? No, not at all. Do not do that. Do not do that. Let me know your thoughts on this. I would love to hear your position on loan forgiveness and the questions that you might have, because it is a really big hot button issue right now. So share your thoughts with me. Thanks, everyone.